Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Dial It Up, and tonight we are going to be talking about the brand new card design. Yay! Okay, so as of the Superior Foes of Spider-Man set, we now have this brand new card design, and this will be the Heroclix card design going forward. So all cards are going to be designed like this. And we're going to basically go from top to bottom, just saying what everything is, where everything is being found now on these cards. So at the very top here, you can see the names. So this is going to be the name of the actual character that will be found on their dial, and their keywords, much like beforehand, the older cards have this, but now underneath we have their real name. This is used for things like ID cards, any game effect that's going to call out a character's real name. It's now being found with all of the other name information, which is a nice place to find it rather than it being originally was on the back of the card. In the corner here, you'll actually see the set symbol and their number, their collector number, which is also something that was previously found on the back of the card. In the bubble here is the picture of the actual sculpt itself, and it's going to be where you're going to now find improved targeting, which is going to have a movement or, improvements, improved movement, improved targeting. That's all going to be found now on the loop here, this bubble of the character. Now, the big difference here that you're going to see behind the character is actually going to show rarity now rather than experience. Previously, we saw either a yellow, a blue, a red, or like a blended background, and that was supposed to denote kind of the experience level of the Clix itself that you were looking at, whether it was their veteran souped up version or their rookie just learning version. Now we're seeing what the actual rarity of the card itself is, rather than it being part of the collector tab. So this, we're looking at the common Spider-Man, and then you'll see the uncommon Silk, the rare Puff Adder, which is a lot easier to tell the difference now, the white and the silver. And then you have, Chase is in the wrong spot. Then you have the gold for the super rares and the orangey color now for the chases. Also, when we look at the Spider-Man there, he's got the improved targeting, where the other Spider-Man here just has the improved movement. So you'll see how those are going to line up there. The other thing that we're going to find on the front of the cards here, as I throw them all over the place, is the special powers. So at the very top, we're going to find the traits like we would before, explained exactly how they would be on the old cards. But now we're going to see in order of the dial placement, so movement, attack, defense, damage, these special powers. So normally where we would see this special defense would be somewhere over here lined up with the rest of the defense powers. It's now going to be at the top, so that when we have characters that have a lot of text, like Morlun here, it's all going to be on the front of the card. All of this is information that you can just easily look at and get to without having to flip the card over. And if you guys have watched any of our games, you'll know that if there is a special power on the back of a card, it's very likely that I'm going to forget that I have that power. So now that you have it all at the front of the card, it's going to be a lot harder to forget that those powers are there, because it's going to be right in your face. But it can get a little confusing when you do have all the powers lined up and then you have your standard powers, where it's kind of out of order here, but it doesn't take too long to get used to the placement of those. So as I mentioned, we have now our standard powers. Now these are still lined up the way they used to be. A lot of people didn't know this about these standard powers, but how they are placed on the card is actually where they end up showing up on the dial. So where her movement powers here, this is Silk, has running shot, then sidestep. If you look at the back on her dial, then she has running shot and then sidestep. So these are actually listed on the card as when they're going to show up on the dial. As a neat little tidbit that we had on the older cards that not everybody knew about. So that's all the information that we're going to find on the front of the card. So if we flip them over, now we've got the rest of the information is, we have just some nice little art here, but we have everything on the back of the card is what is going to be found on the actual character's dials. So you've got their range, all of their stats, their powers, their entire dial layout, and their point value, and any team ability if they have it. So the fact of having all of this on the back of the card, all of the information on the back card, like I mentioned, is stuff that's going to be on the dial. So when we get into the new tournament rules, that your opponent can't look at the back of your card, they don't need to know any information on there, because everything that they would need to know is going to be on the physical dial of the character itself, right in front of them on the board. The only other thing I wanted to point out with the cards I showed Morlin a little earlier is when we have characters like this who have really wordy powers and a lot of powers, you don't see any standard powers here, because his card is actually turned into a booklet, and you can find all of the standard powers lined up on the inside of them. And then once again on the back there. Now, as I mentioned that in actual tournament rulings here, your opponent isn't allowed to look at the back of your card where it shows your dial. One of the easier ways to do that is to have something like this. These are just card sleeves. You can pretty much pick them up at any hobby card game shop. They are cheap. Backs cover your dial, and that way if you have an opponent that needs to look at your cards for all those special powers that they've got there, you don't worry about them chancing peeking at the dial. Last thing that I mentioned, now that I've got Puff Adder at the top here, is the ring around the character. He's actually a unique, which is going to show on the card there, and the primes are going to have the same thing. They're going to have a green ring there. So that was the new card design. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. There's certain little nitpicks about it, but now that we've actually have them out in hand, don't hate them as much as I thought I was going to. And it's actually pretty nice to have all the information that you need for special powers on the front of the card. As I mentioned, I'm horrible for forgetting about special powers that are on the back of the card, so this is good for me. If you guys have any comment, questions, or concerns, something that you thought that I didn't mention in the video, just let me know down below, and we'll see you guys next time for another episode of Dial It Up.
Married with Clix is brought to you in part by MajesticCCG.com. Check out the new premium site with MajesticCCG.com/Apex-Insiders. Check the link below. Trust me. Trying to remember that from me talking? Not going to help. You'll get awesome articles at $3 a month, with the first month being free, from amazing writers such as Paris Gordon, Easton Brock, Aaron Cantu. I'm even going to be contributing occasionally. And if you're familiar with the Meta Lab, check out some of Mike Payne's articles. So, check it out again, MajesticCCG.com/Apex-Insiders for your look into the minds of some of the greats.